When Colonel Rick Wilson made a promise to his dying 6-year-old son, he had no idea it would bring him face to face with the king of pop. What happened next changed 3 lives forever. This isn't just a story about a celebrity hospital visit. This is about a father's impossible promise, a soldier's broken pride, and how sometimes the greatest gift isn't what you can afford to give. October 12th, 1991. Children's Hospital Los Angeles was buzzing with excitement, but Rick Wilson barely noticed. He was focused on one thing only: his son Danny, who was lying unconscious in room 314 after his second heart surgery in 3 months. The 6-year-old boy's tiny chest rose and fell with the rhythm of machines that were keeping him alive. Rick sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside Danny's bed, his prosthetic left leg aching from sitting in the same position for hours. The Panama veteran hadn't left his son's side for 72 hours straight, surviving on hospital vending machine coffee and the determination that had carried him through 3 combat tours. The prosthetic was a constant reminder of that final mission in Panama City. Rick had been leading his squad through a routine patrol when the world exploded around him. He remembered the sound first, that distinctive whistle of incoming mortar fire that every soldier learned to recognize. Then the blast that threw him 15 feet and left Sergeant Martinez dead beside him. Rick had survived, but part of him, more than just his leg, had stayed in that dusty Panamanian street. During those first months of recovery, it was Danny who had kept him going. "Daddy, when you get your robot leg, will you be able to run with me?" 5-year-old Danny had asked, his innocent eyes seeing adventure where Rick saw disability. That's when Rick had made his first promise to his son. "We'll run together, buddy, faster than ever." But this was different. In war, Rick knew his enemy. Here, fighting for his child's life, the enemy was invisible, unpredictable, and winning. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd survived explosions designed to kill him, only to watch his son fight a battle Rick couldn't even understand, let alone help with. "Mr. Wilson?" Dr. Patricia Chen entered the room with Danny's latest test results. Rick straightened up, trying to read her expression. After 6 months of hospital stays, he'd learned to interpret the subtle changes in doctors' faces. "His heart is deteriorating faster than we anticipated," Dr. Chen said gently. "We need to move him to the top of the transplant list immediately." Rick nodded, his jaw clenched. What does that mean for his chances? "It means we're running out of time." Those 5 words hit Rick harder than the mortar blast that had taken his leg 2 years earlier in Panama City. At least in war, he could fight back. Here, all he could do was wait and pray that somewhere, somehow, another family's tragedy would become his son's salvation. That evening, as Rick watched Danny sleep, he made a decision that would haunt him for months. Leaning close to his son's ear, he whispered words that came from his heart but that his wallet couldn't support. "Hey, buddy, when you get your new heart and you're all better, Daddy's going to take you to Disneyland, just like you've been asking. We'll go on all the rides, meet Mickey Mouse, eat ice cream for breakfast. That's a promise, soldier." Danny's eyes fluttered open, still groggy from medication. "Really, Daddy? Even though I'm sick?" "Especially because you're sick. You're the bravest little soldier I know, and soldiers keep their promises." For the first time in weeks, Danny smiled. "I can't wait to meet Mickey Mouse, Daddy. Will you come on all the rides with me?" Rick looked at his prosthetic leg, then back at his son's hopeful eyes. "Every single one, buddy. Every single one." Danny's hospital room had become a small universe unto itself. The walls were covered with drawings from his kindergarten classmates. Crayon pictures of hearts with smiley faces and messages like, "Get well soon, Danny," and "We miss you." His favorite was from his best friend Jake, who had drawn a picture of them playing soccer together with the caption, "Waiting for you to come home." In the bed next to Danny's was 7-year-old Maria Santos, who was recovering from her 3rd round of chemotherapy. The 2 children had become inseparable during their overlapping stays, creating an elaborate game involving their IV poles that they called robot racing. Maria's grandmother would bring them both homemade tamales, and Danny would share his collection of comic books that his father read to them both during the long afternoon hours. "Danny," Maria had whispered one evening when both children were having trouble sleeping, Are you scared about your new heart? Sometimes, Danny admitted. What if it doesn't fit right? What if it doesn't like the same foods I like? Maria giggled despite her own fears. Hearts don't eat food, silly. But I think hearts remember happiness. So if you get a happy person's heart, you'll be extra happy. It was conversations like these that reminded Rick daily of his son's incredible resilience. While Rick struggled with feelings of helplessness and rage at the unfairness of childhood illness, Danny somehow maintained an optimism that humbled his combat-hardened father. But that night, alone in the hospital bathroom, Rick Wilson broke down. His disability pension barely covered their basic expenses, let alone a trip to Disneyland. He'd made a promise to his dying son that he had no idea how to keep. The proud soldier who had never backed down from a fight was facing his first impossible mission. What Rick didn't know was that 3 floors above, someone was about to change everything. Michael Jackson had arrived at Children's Hospital that morning for what his publicist called a routine charitable visit. But there was nothing routine about the way Michael approached these hospital visits. While cameras captured him with groups of children in the playroom, Michael always made sure to visit the critical care units privately, without media attention. What the media didn't see were moments like these. Michael sitting quietly with 10-year-old Marcus, who hadn't spoken since witnessing his parents' car accident. No words were exchanged, but Michael hummed Ben softly while Marcus drew pictures of superheroes. Or the time he spent with 8-year-old Sarah, teaching her to moonwalk while she was connected to a dialysis machine, both of them laughing as her medical tubing got tangled with each slide step. Michael carried a small notebook where he wrote down every child's name and something special about them. Not for publicity or fan mail purposes, but because he had learned that remembering details, a favorite color, a pet's name, a dream about becoming a firefighter, could be the difference between a child feeling like a patient or feeling like a person. These visits weren't easy for Michael. Each child's struggle reminded him of his own lost childhood, the years when he was performing instead of playing, working instead of wondering. But somewhere along the way, he had realized that his pain could serve a purpose. If he couldn't reclaim his own childhood innocence, he could at least help protect and restore it for others. It was during one of these quiet visits that Michael first heard about the little boy in room 314. "That's Danny Wilson," Nurse Maria Santos told Michael as they walked past the room. 6 years old, waiting for a heart transplant. His father hasn't left his side in 3 days. He's a veteran, lost his leg in Panama. It's heartbreaking, really. Michael stopped walking. "Can I meet them?" The father seems pretty protective. He doesn't let many people visit Danny except family. "Would you ask? Sometimes dads need support too." 15 minutes later, Maria knocked on Danny's door. Rick looked up from the book he was reading to his son, immediately suspicious of the stranger standing behind the nurse. "Mr. Wilson, this is Michael Jackson. He's visiting children in the hospital today and wondered if he could meet Danny." Rick's first instinct was to say no. His son was too sick for visitors, too fragile for excitement. But then he saw Danny's eyes light up with a spark that had been missing for weeks. "Are you really Michael Jackson?" Danny whispered, his small voice barely audible. Michael approached the bed slowly, his voice gentle. "I am. And you must be Danny. I heard you're waiting for something pretty special. A new heart. Mine doesn't work right. Well, until your new heart arrives, can I keep the one you have company?" Rick watched, amazed, as his reserved, sick little boy began talking animatedly with the world's biggest superstar. For 20 minutes, Michael sat on the edge of Danny's bed, asking about his favorite toys, his drawings, his dreams. "Danny, what's the first thing you want to do when you get your new heart?" Michael asked. Danny's eyes immediately found his father's face. "Daddy promised to take me to Disneyland. We're going to ride all the rides together and meet Mickey Mouse." Rick felt his stomach drop. The innocent pride in his son's voice as he shared their secret promise made Rick's deception feel even worse. Michael noticed the subtle change in Rick's expression, the tightening around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. After years of reading people, Michael had learned to recognize the look of a parent carrying an impossible burden. "That sounds like an amazing adventure," Michael told Danny. "Disneyland is magical. But you know what? The most magical thing about it isn't the rides or the characters. It's going there with someone who loves you as much as your daddy loves you. After promising to visit again, Michael stepped into the hallway with Rick. Colonel Wilson, can I speak with you privately for a moment? They walked to a quiet alcove near the elevator. Michael's entire demeanor had changed from the gentle entertainer to someone who understood the weight of impossible promises. Rick, can I call you Rick? I see something in your eyes that I recognize. It's the look of a father who would give anything for his child, but feels like it might not be enough. Rick's military composure started to crack. I don't know what you mean. The promise you made to Danny about Disneyland, you're worried about keeping it. Rick looked away, his pride stinging. I can handle my family's affairs. I'm sure you can. You've been handling them beautifully. But sometimes even the strongest soldiers need backup. Michael paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm not offering charity, Rick. I'm offering understanding. When I was young, my father made me promises about what would happen when I got older, when I got successful. Some he kept, some he couldn't. The ones that mattered most weren't about money or trips. They were about time, attention, and love. Rick finally looked at Michael, seeing something unexpected in the superstar's eyes. Genuine empathy, not pity. Danny doesn't need Disneyland to know you love him, Michael continued. But if Disneyland is the promise you made, then maybe we can figure out how to keep that promise in a way that honors both your love for him and your dignity as his father. That night, Rick lay awake thinking about Michael's words. The next morning, he found a small gift bag at Danny's bedside table. Inside was a small Mickey Mouse plush toy and a note. For Danny, from someone who believes in promises. MJ, Danny clutched the Mickey Mouse to his chest. Look, Daddy, Mickey came to visit me early. But it wasn't the toy that moved Rick. It was the message. Michael hadn't solved Rick's problem or taken away his burden. He'd simply acknowledged that the promise mattered, and that keeping promises was about more than just money. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael visited Danny 3 more times. Never with fanfare, never with cameras. Just quiet visits where he'd sit with Danny, ask about his day, and sometimes bring his guitar to play gentle songs that helped Danny sleep. During the 3rd visit, Danny was having a particularly difficult day. His medication was making him nauseous, and he was scared about the surgery that doctors said could happen at any moment. I'm scared, Michael, Danny whispered. What if my new heart doesn't like me? Michael smiled gently. Danny, do you know why I think your new heart is going to love you? Why? Because any heart that gets to live inside someone as brave and kind as you is the luckiest heart in the world. That heart is going to get to feel all the love your daddy has for you, all the excitement you'll feel riding rides at Disneyland, all the joy you'll have meeting new friends. Do you really think Daddy and I will go to Disneyland? Michael glanced at Rick, who was listening from his chair. Danny, I know your daddy will keep his promise to you. Maybe not exactly the way he first imagined, but the best promises aren't about the details. They're about the love behind them. Later that day, Michael asked Rick to walk with him to the hospital cafeteria. Rick, I have an idea, but I need you to hear me out before you say no. Rick tensed, expecting the offer he'd been dreading, direct financial help that would wound his pride while solving his problem. The hospital has a program where they provide travel vouchers for families dealing with long-term care situations. It's not charity, it's recognition that healing happens best when families can experience joy together. Rick frowned. I've never heard of this program. That's because it's unofficial, funded by donations from people who want to help but understand that dignity matters as much as assistance. Michael pulled out an envelope. These are travel vouchers that can be used for family trips during recovery periods. The hospital social worker will tell you they're part of your ongoing care plan. Rick stared at the envelope, understanding immediately. Michael had created a way for him to keep his promise without compromising his dignity. Why would you do this? Because 3 years ago, I made a promise to a little girl in another hospital. I promised her I'd always use my music to help kids who needed hope. Every time I keep that promise, it keeps her memory alive. Rick took the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. I don't know how to thank you. Keep your promise to Danny. That's all the thanks I need. On November 3rd, 1991, Danny Wilson received his new heart. The surgery was successful, but the recovery would be long and challenging. Throughout those difficult weeks, Mickey Mouse sat by Danny's bedside, a small reminder of the promise waiting for him. Michael visited twice during Danny's recovery, once to simply sit quietly while Danny slept off the anesthesia, and once to play his guitar softly while Danny did his breathing exercises. "When I'm all better, will you come visit us at Disneyland?" Danny asked during that final hospital visit. Michael smiled. "I'll be there in spirit, buddy. Every time you smile on a ride, every time you hug Mickey Mouse, I'll feel it." 3 months later, Rick Wilson and his son walked through the gates of Disneyland. Danny, still weak but determined, held his father's hand on one side and his Mickey Mouse on the other. The moment they stepped onto Main Street, USA, Danny stopped walking and just stared. The colors seemed brighter than anything he remembered from his hospital room. The sounds of laughter and music filled spaces in his heart that had been quiet for too long. Rick watched his son's face transform, seeing wonder replace the careful caution that had become Danny's default expression during months of medical procedures. "It's real, Daddy," Danny whispered, his voice filled with awe. "It's really, really real." They didn't rush through the park trying to do everything. Instead, they took their time, sitting on benches when Danny got tired, sharing ice cream, and taking pictures with characters who seemed to know exactly how special this visit was. Their first ride was the carousel. Rick had worried about how his prosthetic would handle getting on and off the moving horses, but Danny had chosen a chariot instead. "This way we can ride together, Daddy," he said, as if he had planned it all along. As the carousel turned and Disney music played, Rick realized he was crying, not from sadness, but from pure joy at seeing his son smile that brilliantly. At lunch, Danny carefully saved half of his Mickey Mouse-shaped pretzel. "This is for Maria," he explained to his father. "I promised I'd bring her something from Disneyland." Rick made a mental note to mail the pretzel to the hospital, along with pictures and a letter from Mickey Mouse. The most magical moment came during the parade. Danny had been getting tired, and Rick was considering heading back to their hotel when the Disney characters began their procession down Main Street. Somehow, Mickey Mouse spotted Danny in the crowd and broke from the parade formation to come say hello. Later, Rick would wonder if Michael had somehow arranged this moment, but watching Danny's face light up as Mickey knelt down to hug him, Rick decided it didn't matter how the magic happened, only that it did. On their last day, as they rode the Small World attraction together, Danny looked up at his father. "Daddy, this is even better than I imagined." "Better how, buddy?" "Because you're here with me. That's the best part." That evening, in their hotel room, Rick wrote a letter he'd been composing in his head for weeks. "Dear Michael, we made it to Disneyland. Danny rode every ride he was strong enough for, met Mickey Mouse 6 times, and ate ice cream for breakfast just like I promised. But the real magic wasn't in the park. It was in learning that keeping promises isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance. You didn't just help us get to Disneyland. You taught me that being a good father means accepting help gracefully when it means keeping faith with my son. Danny talks about you often, not as a celebrity, but as the friend who believed in promises. Thank you for showing me that strength sometimes means letting others help you be strong." Rick Wilson. He never sent the letter, but he kept it in Danny's baby book as a reminder of the moment his pride learned to bend without breaking. Years later, when Danny was a healthy teenager, he would ask his father about that time in the hospital. "Dad, do you think Michael Jackson really cared about us? Or was it just something celebrities do?" Rick would always give the same answer. "Son, Michael Jackson taught me that caring isn't about the size of the gesture. It's about seeing what someone needs and finding a way to help them keep their dignity while getting it. That's not something celebrities do. That's something good people do." Danny Wilson grew up to become a pediatric nurse, specializing in children awaiting organ transplants. In his office, he keeps 2 things: a photo of him and his father at Disneyland, and a small, well-worn Mickey Mouse that reminds him daily that promises kept with love are the most powerful medicine of all. But the journey from that sick 6-year-old to the confident nurse wasn't always smooth. There were setbacks during his teenage years. Moments when the anti-rejection medications made him sick, when he couldn't play contact sports like other kids, when he wondered if his borrowed heart made him different from everyone else. During one particularly difficult period when Danny was 16, he called his father from college, feeling overwhelmed by the pressure of pre-med courses. "Dad, what if I'm not strong enough for this? What if I can't handle seeing sick kids every day?" Rick's response was immediate and certain. "Son, you've been preparing for this job your whole life. Every day you spent in that hospital, every fear you faced, every smile you shared with other sick children, that was your training. You're not just strong enough. You're exactly who these kids need." That conversation led to Danny's senior thesis project, a study on the psychological impact of promise-keeping between parents and seriously ill children. His research showed that children who received and believed in specific positive promises from their parents during treatment showed measurably better recovery rates and long-term emotional health. The study caught the attention of Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where Danny now works. On his first day, he visited room 314, his old room, where a new child was fighting a similar battle. The boy's name was Miguel, and he was 7 years old with the same wide, scared eyes Danny remembered seeing in his own reflection years earlier. "I used to live in this room," Danny told Miguel quietly. "I was scared too. But you know what? I got better, and I grew up to help other kids get better too." Miguel's father, standing in the same corner where Rick once stood, looked at Danny with the same mixture of hope and desperation that had defined those difficult months. "The most important thing," Danny told Miguel's father privately, "isn't whether you can afford to keep every promise you make. It's that you make promises worth keeping and that you find a way to honor the love behind them." Rick Wilson never forgot the lesson Michael Jackson taught him in a hospital hallway, that accepting help isn't about weakness and that keeping promises is about more than just having the means to fulfill them. Sometimes the greatest gifts aren't the ones we can afford to give, but the ones we're humble enough to accept when they help us love better. And sometimes a simple promise between a father and son becomes the foundation for a lifetime of understanding what it really means to be strong. Michael Jackson continued visiting children's hospitals for the rest of his life, but he never forgot the veteran who taught him that true strength lies not in the ability to solve everyone's problems, but in the wisdom to help them solve their own. The father's impossible promise became possible not through magic, but through the simple recognition that love finds a way, pride can coexist with humility, and sometimes the most important promises are the ones that teach us how to receive help as gracefully as we give it. In the end, Danny got his heart, Rick kept his promise, and Michael learned once again that the most powerful performances happen not on stage, but in quiet hospital rooms where promises are made, kept, and remembered long after the applause fades away.